Hey guys. Hi guys, this is live right now. It's live.
It's not a hobby. It's your empire.
Yeah, so this is what's going on. I just came back from downtown LA. Nothing going on. It's been nice, quiet, peaceful. Not peaceful, but a lot of individuals going out solo, causing harm and destroying properties, but no big crowd. Yesterday, the Apple store got broken into in downtown LA, so they took a loss there. I didn't get to see the Apple store though, because I just drove through downtown LA. But I'll check it out tomorrow. I hope you guys are all doing okay over there. And safe. Hey, chat. If you're new, subscribe. We talk about a lot of good stuff here. News, politics, events, entertainment, you name it, we talk about it. Just like right now. Who are all these females being arrested? Oh wow. Man. A lot of people are getting arrested now. I think the Marines are dressed up as police. Maybe. I'm not sure. Some of them. But, the governor, Gavin Newsom, has authorized and forced the judges to prevent Trump from bringing in the Marines and National Guard. So I think Gavin Newsom pulled a lot of officers from other areas and jurisdictions that are not being affected by this and brought them over to downtown LA to handle the situation here. Now, the people breaking into the stores late at night, that's a big problem. And that's where the LAPD is losing, because they cannot stop people from burglarizing and vandalizing and destroying certain things out there. So we got to make sure that they got to make sure that they contain the situation, and they did a pretty good job today. Excuse me. Yeah.
I invited these governors here today because, as the chief executives of their states, they willfully ignore federal law, shield illegal aliens, and pass the cost of free services onto their hard-working taxpayers. It's hard to figure out whose side these governors are on. They shield criminals while their own citizens pay the price. Just a few weeks ago, Minnesota Governor Walz stood at a commencement podium and smeared ICE agents as, quote, Trump modern-day Gestapo, end quote. Comparing brave law enforcement officers who risk their lives to uphold federal law to Nazi thugs is not just wrong, it's vile and disgusting. I can only hope this reckless remark was not meant to incite violence assaults on ICE officers are already up 400% compared to this time last year. And we have witnessed repeated attempts at obstruction and assault against federal law enforcement, recently captured on video in California. Governor Hochul's sanctuary policies cost taxpayers billions to house, feed, and provide driver's license for illegal aliens, while the cost of rent rises and hospitals are overrun. Her defiance of federal law invites crime to plague communities across the state. Governor Pritzker faces lawsuits for obstructing ICE as he turns cities like Chicago into havens for drugs and crime. He's yet another governor providing free care to illegal aliens that many of his own citizens lack. These governors handcuff law enforcement from doing their jobs, harbor predators, and call it compassion. It's not compassion, and it's costing lives, hurting Americans, and draining taxpayer money. Congress must consider whether to defund every single penny of federal dollars going to cities and states that prioritize criminal, illegal aliens over the American people. Americans want to return to common sense. The Trump administration and this Republican Congress aims to restore our safety and sovereignty. It's past time for these governors to put America first. I now yield to Ranking Member Lynch for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank our witnesses. Governor Walz, good to see you again. Governor Pritzker, Governor Hochul, good to see you again. Ms. Perryman, thank you for your willingness to come before this committee and help us with our work. At this very moment, we sit in this hearing, and at the order of President Trump, the National Guard are on the streets of Los Angeles, and active duty Marines are on their way. At Trump's order, Californians are now forced to navigate an active military zone in their midst as they try to go to work or decide if it's safe to send their kids to school. And because of Trump, no American city or state is safe as he lays this groundwork to take his militarization playbook nationwide. 2 days ago, he confirmed that he is considering invoking the Insurrection Act to expand.
Do you need a loan for your business? Well, if you've been around for over a year, I'm about to show you how to get up to $3 million in funding. Sounds too good to be true? Then come closer. I'm about to show you how you can access
the deployment of active duty military forces against civilians across this country, preparing for a future in which dissent is met with armed force and the machinery of war is turned inward on the American people. If unchecked, this marks not just a threat to our most sacred civil liberties, but a violent blow to American democracy itself. Last week in Los Angeles, peaceful Americans came out to protest the administration's cruel and illegal mass deportation operations in their neighborhoods. President Trump inflamed events on the grounds as an excuse to unleash the U.S. military on its own people, sending in 4,000 National Guard members without the approval of the governor of California, and deploying 700 active duty Marines into an American city is meant to provoke, not pacify, and is an aggressive assertion of federal control where it is neither needed nor desired. Our Marines are often the first responders in a war zone, but American neighborhoods are not war zones. Protesters are not the enemy. They are Americans who have the constitutional right to peacefully assemble and speak up. The problem for President Trump and my colleagues across the aisle is that the American people hate what he is doing in Los Angeles to inflame tensions. Americans are deeply concerned that the president deployed federal troops to an American city over the objections of state and local leadership, and knowing it would escalate the situation. He put members of the public, law enforcement officers, and troops in danger because he loved the images and theatrics of using force. Let's be clear. Democrats oppose violence and lawlessness in all its forms, as well as any threat to public safety. President Trump himself is the worst offender. The chaos he is fomenting in LA is just an extension of his flagrant disregard for the Constitution and our rule of law and democracy. It is clear that the Trump administration's mass deportation policy is not limited to those that have committed serious and violent crimes. It also includes children who are U.S. citizens, immigrants with legal status, and even international students. On February 4th, President Trump deported a 10-year-old girl, a U.S. citizen who was recovering from brain cancer while traveling to Houston for an emergency hospital visit. This 10-year-old girl was detained and deported with her undocumented parents and 4 siblings, 3 of whom were also born here in the United States. Her parents have no criminal history, and what's going to happen to her, an American child, now that she can't see her expert doctors, is unknown. Trump deported another U.S. citizen, a 2-year-old toddler, from Fort Lauderdale on February 21st, deported to Brazil. But because she is not a citizen or resident of Brazil, she had to enter the country as a tourist, which leaves her unable to access key programs like pediatric care and daycare or school. Are our cities safer now that this 10-year-old girl and the 2-year-old toddler are gone? U.S. citizens, both of them? In Austin, Texas, a husband and wife were recently detained after a routine traffic stop. The husband was quickly deported, while the wife was released to pick up her 3 children from school, only to be deported with them several days later. 2 of those kids are U.S. citizens. Is the family the violent criminals that Trump is supposed to be saving us from? The Trump administration has tried to sweep aside the fact that this pattern of mass deportation operation is letting dangerous criminals roam free while it picks off peaceful, contributing members of our communities. Busboys at restaurants, day laborers at Home Depot, parents who are taking their kids to school. In late March, ICE agents wearing masks and hoodies detained Rumeysa Ozturk. And those of you who watched that abduction, when you compare the old films of the Gestapo grabbing people off the streets of Poland, and you compare them to those nondescript thugs who grabbed that student, that graduate student, it does look like a Gestapo operation. It does look like the Gestapo. She was snatched away and detained 1,700 miles away. Her congresswoman couldn't reach her. Her family couldn't reach her. She was held incommunicado, 1,700 miles away. Her attorney could not reach her. Yeah, that was Gestapo-like. That's an appropriate comparison. That's exactly what it was like. And when U.S. citizen, she was here legally studying at Tufts University. She had every right to be here. We gave her permission to come. Her family entrusted us. They chose Boston because it's a place of intellectual freedom and respect for cultural freedom. And that trust was apparently misplaced.
If you don't have an automated trading system, I can set one up for you in less than 3 days. In the world of digital currencies, where markets operate 24/7, the ability to quickly adapt and seize opportunities is powerful.
Miss Ozturk's a Turkish national on a student visa to attend Tufts University. A video of that incident shows Ozturk walking along a public street in Boston, Massachusetts, my home city, when several masked figures just snatched her phone and backpack, handcuffed her, and hustled her into an unmarked vehicle. What's that sound like? What does that sound like? The Trump administration is putting extremism, cruelty, and chaos over protecting kids and families. Trump isn't focused on getting violent criminals off our streets. He's terrorizing our communities to fulfill deportation quotas with fathers and mothers, grandparents, and kids. And he's trying to strong-arm our city and state leaders to divert their limited resources away from serious public safety threats to instead focus on peaceful, law-abiding families, just as he has diverted federal resources away from combating drug trafficking, violent crime, and terrorism to fuel his lawless mass deportation campaign. Trump isn't trying to protect us. He's trying to divide us. It's us and them. He's trying to divide us. And some people are helping him. He's pitting neighbor against neighbor. But it's not immigrant kids who are about to kick millions of Americans off their out there. It's not them. And he's doing that to pay for a tax break for billionaires. And it's not immigrants who are using the military to silence Americans exercising their right to speak truth to power. These are not the strong and measured actions of the leader of a free country. They are the ruthless maneuvers of an aspiring autocrat hell-bent on consolidating power by any means necessary. This is disgraceful. It should not happen in this country. This is wrong. Deploying the military against a civilian population is wrong. And if we don't step up, this will continue. If we don't step up and declare what is right under our Constitution, then other cities, other citizens will meet this same fate. I'm proud of my Democratic colleagues who are willing to stand up to this thuggery. Trump is a wannabe gangster, and he's showing the world what he's about. And I'm proud. You know, my dad served in the Second World War. He fought the Nazis in Northern Africa. He fought the Nazis on the Italian peninsula. And I think he's looking down right now and he's happy that I'm fighting today's Nazis. He's proud of that. We all should be. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Without objection, Representatives Stauber, Finstead, Fishback, Emmer, Morrison, and Craig of Minnesota, Representatives Miller, LaHood, Davis, and Ramirez of Illinois, Representatives Stefanik, Tenney, Lawler, Goldman, Ocasio-Cortez, Gillen of New York, and Moskowitz of Florida are waived onto the committee for the purpose of questioning the witnesses at today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. Our witnesses today include the governors of 3 states. I want to welcome you all here. First, we have Tim Walz, governor of the state of Minnesota. He was sworn into office on January 7th, 2019. His second term began on January 2nd, 2023. Governor, welcome back to the House of Representatives. Next, we have J.B. Pritzker, governor of the state of Illinois. He was sworn into office on January 14th, 2019. His second term began on January 9th, 2023. I'm going to yield briefly to my colleague, Raj Krishnaborte, for further introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for yielding. In Illinois, we like our pizza deep, our politics lively, and our budgets balanced. The last one used to be a miracle before Governor Pritzker took office. I know firsthand, as the son of immigrants who realized the American dream in Illinois, that immigrants make enormous contributions to our country. Governor Pritzker understands that too. His great-grandfather fled pogroms in Ukraine in 1881 and settled in Chicago to build a better life. That legacy has shaped his lifelong commitment to public service, justice, and opportunity. Before entering public office, Governor Pritzker built a successful business career and became a leading philanthropist, supporting early childhood education and establishing the Illinois Holocaust Museum. Governor Pritzker has delivered historic investments in education, workforce training, infrastructure, technology, and clean energy, all while expanding paid leave, raising the minimum wage, and defending the rights of all.
So for over 17 years, I thought that I had a problem with this, but I actually didn't. And I want you to consider for a second, just entertain me. If you think that you have a problem with this or a problem stopping this, that's not actually your problem either. And so I wanted to let you know that there's a video that you can click below and register to watch, but I don't want you to do it right now. I don't want you to register for that video right now, because that video is going to walk you step by step through how we've helped over 6,000 of our clients permanently break free from this, but it has nothing to do with this, right? And so I know that if you register and you see that video and you see that it's an hour long, you're not going to watch it right now because you don't understand what you're going to learn and why it's important. So I just want to take a second to unpack this dynamic of what I discovered in my life and see if it maybe resonates with you. And the reason that I started to realize, I started to get these kind of glimpses into this wasn't actually my real problem, because I noticed that when I was out in public and I didn't have the opportunity to go to this, I might be with my wife and my eyes start to wander, right? Something catches my attention that is kind of lust-based, my eyes start to wander. And I started to notice that this is one of those dynamics where, you know, I typically try to have control over my thoughts, and in these circumstances, my thoughts had control over me. This might be a circumstance or a situation where I go into Sunday morning services fully intent on focusing my attention on learning truth from what's being taught on stage, and all of a sudden something else catches my eye that is lust-filled. And now all of a sudden I'm being distracted by this when I came here with the intention that was good. And all of a sudden my thoughts have control over me again, and I'm focusing on something that is dark. And so this is a game that I saw played in my life over and over when I'm seeking light, and darkness is trying to pull me into it, distract me from pursuing the things that I had my heart set on. And so it wasn't this that caused the lustful mindset. I thought that for a while. The reason that I realized that wasn't true either is because there were periods of time where I'd taken this out of my life for 30, 60, 90 days, even a year at one point. And I still had a problem with going into public and things grabbing my eye, right? And so I assumed that when I stopped this for an extended period of time, that those symptoms of being distracted by lust would go away, and they didn't. And so I started to understand that this wasn't the problem. This is a result of my brain being hyper fixated on lust and having these controlling thoughts and these controlling urges. But what's even deeper than that, and this is going to take some work of like actually peeling back the layers, and the deeper that you go, the closer to freedom you're going to be. Below the controlling urges and these controlling unwanted desires was some root wounds that I had. And when I started to understand that my brain was actually designed to cope with these roots by escaping and medicating and sedating and hyper-fixating on other things, I started to understand that this was just a brokenness inside of me. These were actually just root problems and root challenges that I was working through. And what was really surprising is a lot of them didn't have to do with lust at all. Lust was just the thing that my brain had come up with a really creative solution to cope with the pain that I was experiencing internally. And because I'm a man, and I tend to suppress things and try to ignore them and just, move forward, I'd never really given these things attention. So I didn't even really understand or have awareness that they were going on. And so the only thing that I was aware of is the fact that the way that I was living was not sustainable. I was trying to pursue light, and darkness kept showing up in my mind and controlling me and preventing me from fully living into the purpose for which I was put on earth for. And I knew that there was a point in time where I had this break. I couldn't do this anymore. I tried all of these things. I tried the blockers. I tried these accountability apps. I tried reading the book more that I can't say because of compliance reasons, going to Sunday services more, connecting with guys in that environment, and trying to get all of the help that I could. And it was like I tried to increase my willpower and my discipline. I was super fit, and I was able to have discipline in finances, and I was able to have discipline in my eating. But when it came to this, it's like I lost control, and I didn't understand why. It's because it had nothing to do with this and everything to do with something deeper. And so the reason that this video is placed in front of you, I don't think by coincidence, and I think that you're sitting there listening to these words right now and knowing that they're not coming from me, but maybe something higher that placed it in front of you to communicate to you for a reason in this moment right now. This may be something that you're struggling with, or maybe it's not this, maybe it's that distracting thought and that distracting eye that's you're fixated on light. You know that you're put here to pursue light, but darkness continues to consume you, continues to distract you, continues to pull you in. You don't understand why you can't stop. And I want to propose to you that maybe it's time to stop trying all of these surface level fixes for something that is much deeper. And so if you're tired of resisting and failing over and over, you're tired of trying all of these new apps and these new strategies, or maybe sitting in with a professional that's trying to walk you through all of these surface level fixes, or you're tired of calling your buddies every time that you fail and thinking that you're going to guilt.
Illinois. Governor, thank you for your leadership and for joining us today.
Yields back. Next we have Kathy Hochul, Governor of the state of New York. She was sworn into office on August 24th, 2021. Welcome, Governor. And finally, we have Sky Perryman. She is the President and CEO of the Democracy Forward Foundation. Thank you all for joining us. Look forward to your discussion this afternoon. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please raise their right hand. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you all solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you all, and you may take a seat. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statement to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it's on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Governor Walz for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Lynch, and members of the committee. I'm proud to be here today as the governor of the great state of Minnesota. Wherever you go in this country, people tend to want the same basic things: safe neighborhoods, affordable household goods, meaningful work, good schools. That's what my administration has worked to ensure for our people, and that's what we've delivered. Under our leadership, Minnesota has been ranked the 4th best state to live in, the 2nd best state to raise a family in, and the 3rd best state for jobs. And when it comes to serious crime, Minnesota has hit its lowest level in over 3 decades, and we consistently have lower violent crime rates than the U.S. average. Now we have a broken immigration system in this country. I think everyone in this room agrees with that. But nothing Minnesota has done to serve its own people stands in the way of the federal government managing border security and policies. While you've convened this hearing to explore the issue of so-called sanctuary states, Minnesota is not even a sanctuary state. Minnesota legislature has passed no such bill making Minnesota a sanctuary state, and I have signed no such law. Minnesota cooperates with federal authorities in a number of ways. When there's a convicted felon in our prisons, we ask about their immigration status and share that information with the Department of Homeland Security.
Why did Amazon send me $20,000? Because I use Amazon AI. I'm going to show you a way to potentially make money by pairing Amazon.
We also cooperate with Homeland Security requests when there's a judicial warrant and when due process has been afforded by our Constitution has been served. But enforcing immigration law is not the role of local and state governments. The fact is, Congress has given federal agencies the authority to enforce immigration laws across this country. That includes Minnesota, and I support them doing so. It's the federal government's job to secure the border. That's why when I was in Congress, I visited the southern border and voted for bills that would have increased funding for Border Patrol, made it easier to hire qualified agents, and deployed advanced technologies to the border. Most importantly, I recognize that securing our border does not mean we sacrifice our constitutional values. Unfortunately, the cruel and misguided policies of this current administration fail to live up to those values. Minnesotans are angry with what they've seen happen to their neighbors. They're angry that the federal government has been snatching people up, putting them in prison, and deporting them without a shred of due process. There's been no notice, no meaningful opportunity to object, and according to the president, no way to get out of these overseas prisons once you end up there. And let's be clear, many of these are law-abiding Americans, people who have been granted asylum or promised protected status. In many cases, it seems these people were reported not based on a criminal behavior, but how they look or what they've said and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Even U.S. citizens, like a 4-year-old boy with cancer, sent to Mexico, away from his father, away from the medical needs, to a country he was not born in or had never been to. Americans deserve a sensible, humane, and effective immigration policy that reduces illegal immigration while protecting fundamental rights. Meanwhile, the administration continues to make life worse for hardworking Americans in a lot of other ways, trying to slash Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, making basic household goods more expensive, and telling people they just need to do more with less. The American people deserve better. You all have the power to legislate, to investigate this administration's abuse and overreach, and protect the American people. And I have to say, I'm disappointed. At a crucial inflection point in our nation's history, Congress is choosing to spend its time trying to cast blames on states like Minnesota that have no hand in creating this crisis. While we may disagree on the best way to maintain border security and public safety, I know we should all be able to agree on a few principles. That everyone in America deserves due process, and that we live in a free country where people should not be locked up for exercising their basic constitutional rights. I hope you'll join me in enforcing accountability to those fundamental ideas, and I look forward to your questions. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I now recognize Governor Pritzker for his opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the committee, good morning, and thank you for inviting me. As governor of the great state of Illinois, I have seen firsthand how states have had to shoulder the consequences of a broken immigration system. I'm proud of how we have responded by promoting public safety, treating people with dignity, supporting our economy, and respecting the rule of law. Safe and compassionate immigration policies, I believe, are vital. In fact, my own family owes everything to this country accepting a young refugee named Nicholas Pritzker to its shores over a century ago. My great-grandfather fled the massacre of Jews in Ukraine and arrived in the United States when he was just 10, without a penny to his name. A social service agency provided him a place to live, a public school taught him English, a public university allowed him to pursue a higher education. My father and grandfather both were naval officers and raised their families with a powerful sense of duty to community and patriotism to our country that still lives deep in my generation. Both were successful entrepreneurs. My family story is not unique. Today, Illinois is home to 1.9 million immigrants. Just like my great-grandfather, they are hardworking, raising families, and paying taxes. Our state and our country have been strengthened by people from across the globe seeking freedom, opportunity, and refuge here. Recently, children, pregnant women, and others fled poverty, violence, and persecution, seeking asylum at our border. Some border state politicians chose to treat them as political pawns, busing them to states like mine and dropping them off in the dead of night in the freezing cold. Illinois chose a different path. Faced with a humanitarian crisis, our state made sure children and families did not go hungry or freeze to death. By doing so, we helped to maintain safety and order in Chicago. As governor, one of my responsibilities is to keep the public safe. That is why I expanded our state police, banned assault weapons and ghost guns to take guns out of the hands of criminals, and invested more than ever before in violence prevention. As a result, violent crime is down in Illinois, and Chicago ended 2024 with its lowest homicide rate in 5 years. As I have consistently said, violent criminals have no place on our streets, and if they are undocumented, I want them out of Illinois and out of our country. And as we are reminded in Los Angeles this week, we can all agree that violence of any kind, whomever it is directed at, is unacceptable. People must be held accountable to the law. Illinois follows the law, but let me be clear, we expect the federal government to follow the law too. We will not participate in abuses of power. We will not violate court orders. We will not ignore the Constitution.
See this property on Craigslist for $4,300 a month? Well, it's been sitting empty for the last 28 days. And there's 44 million long-term rental properties sitting vacant all across America. Now, what if I told you that you could potentially collect your first check from empty properties on Craigslist this week? And here's the craziest part. You don't have to own these properties. You don't have to rent them, and you don't have to furnish them. And
we will not defy the Supreme Court. We will not take away people's rights to peacefully protest. We also respect, and expect this administration to respect, the traditions and legal precedent that dictate how and when our National Guard and military are deployed. As governor, I've had to make the difficult decision to call the Illinois National Guard into service. I have always done it in partnership with my local governments and law enforcement, and with deep and abiding respect for the sacrifice I was asking of our volunteer armed forces. It's wrong to deploy the National Guard and active duty Marines into an American city over the objection of local law enforcement just to inflame a situation and create a crisis. Just as it's wrong to tear children away from their homes and their mothers and fathers who have spent decades living and working in our communities, raising their families. Besides being a father and husband, the greatest honor of my life has been serving as governor. I believe with my whole heart that Illinois is the best place in the country to live, work, and to raise a family. Illinoisans take seriously their responsibility in upholding the most fundamental values of our nation. Values like kindness, empathy, hard work, and fair play. Our people embody the most American ideal of all, that where your life began matters far less than the dreams you can realize here for yourself and your family. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Governor Hochul for her opening statement.
Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Lynch, and members of this committee. As we speak, an American city has been militarized over the objections of their governor. At the outset, I just want to say that this is a flagrant abuse of power and nothing short of an assault on our American values. My views on immigration are simple and direct. Our nation needs secure borders. Our nation needs comprehensive immigration reform from this body. And our state laws dictate that we cooperate with ICE in criminal cases. And our values dictate that we treat all law-abiding people with dignity and respect. The America I believe in is a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. Abandoning either threatens the very foundation on which this great country was built. You know, for 400 years, New York has prospered because of the hard work of these people, these newcomers. People like my grandfather who fled great poverty in Ireland. Grandma and Grandpa had the same American dream that the immigrants today have. I see it in their eyes. They're not here for handouts. They're not here to take advantage of the situation. They're here to work. They want to contribute, earn their place, raise their families. Yet, every day there's another story of children being ripped from the arms of their mothers, wives separated from their husbands, families arrested while attending legal immigration appointments. You know, not long ago in a small town known as Sackett's Harbor in upstate New York, masked and armed ICE agents stormed into a home before dawn. They abducted a mother, her 3 children.
Do you have a business that makes at least $200,000 per year in top-line revenue and has been around for at least 2 years? If so, it might be a lot easier than you think to get the funding your business needs to scale.
Past hell in a detention facility in Texas. I immediately contacted Border Czar Tom Homan and demanded their release. In Jefferson County, more than 60% of the residents voted for Donald Trump. And those people protested in the streets. Local Republican lawmakers, business owners, school leaders all spoke out. Finally, after 2 long weeks, the family was finally returned home. In New York, we understand the difference between going after criminals and traumatizing law-abiding families. Now, some of you will use this hearing to stoke fear. I'm here to talk about the facts. New York has managed an unprecedented immigrant influx because of a broken border. Yet at the same time, our state has become stronger and safer. Today, New York has the lowest homicide rate among the nation's top 10 states. We didn't achieve this with indiscriminate roundups, not by tearing apart innocent families, but by investing $2.6 billion in public safety, engaging in smart, targeted policing, and partnering with law enforcement, federal law enforcement, to apprehend and deport serious criminals. And since I've become governor, we've cooperated in handing over 1,300 convicted criminals to ICE. But what we don't do is civil immigration enforcement. That's the federal government's job. New Yorkers need their state troopers on our highways, seizing guns and drugs. States like mine are doing our part, but we can't be expected to fix the broken immigration system. You know, and the very people who go on cable news and rail about the border are the same ones who torpedo bipartisan legislation each and every time. So here's my message. If you truly care about public safety, if you truly care about the economy, if you truly care about human dignity, then sit down, negotiate, have real reform, secure the border, revive legal pathways, and let people work. At the end of the day, I'll go home and do my job keeping New Yorkers safe. I hope that you will do yours. Thank you.
And I now recognize the Democrat witness, Ms. Perryman, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Acting Ranking Member, for having me here today. And at the outset, let me offer my sincerest condolences to all of you for the passing and your loss of your colleague, Representative Jerry Conley. I'm here today as a lawyer and as the president and CEO of Democracy Forward Foundation, which is a national nonpartisan legal organization that is committed to achieving democracy and a nation that enables all people to thrive. At Democracy Forward, we represent people and communities who make up the very fabric of our nation on a pro bono basis in federal and state courts and regulatory bodies throughout the country. I know this is a hearing focused on immigration, and so I would like to say at the outset and echo the calls for bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform. I will also note that the rhetoric that we have heard the president and his allies use in recent days about immigrants and people in this country is inaccurate, overly politicized, and not solutions-oriented. Fundamentally, Democracy Forward Foundation's work centers on the premise that when the government does its job and delivers for people, our society is stronger. And when our government strays from that purpose, ignoring the Constitution, not achieving and respecting the fidelity of people's rights, our democracy and our people are in danger. Right now, based on the work that we are doing, I am here to say that our American people are in danger and that our democracy is in crisis. I am looking at these United States flags. We need to remember who we are. We right now have a president who has proclaimed without irony that he is a king in a nation that next year will celebrate 250 years since it threw off the reins of monarchy. Since Inauguration Day, the President and his administration have acted beyond the lawful bounds of executive authority. They have usurped the power of this Congress. They have sought to eliminate due process of law. They have ignored court orders. And they are targeting people, civil society organizations, and lawyers. These are anti-democratic actions that present an overall threat to every single American and their well-being and to our values in America. That is why at Democracy Forward Foundation, we have had to go to court to file more than 70 legal actions in federal and state courts and agencies and offices since Inauguration Day to protect the American people's rights. From stopping the president's federal funding freeze, to blocking the decimation of the Department of Education, to having to safeguard due process, to challenging DOJ and Elon Musk's attempts to access personal data on behalf of individual Americans, our team is in court every single day on behalf of people of all identities and ideologies, people in red states and blue states, people in small towns, urban areas, and rural communities. Our work at Democracy Forward demonstrates that the United States Constitution is still here, and it is here for all of us. This administration's tactics with regard to immigration enforcement that we have seen, they shock the conscience. They shock the conscience of the vast majority of the American people, including people who do not see eye to eye on how to fix our immigration problem in this country. They have led us to file and have to file litigation on behalf of religious communities to prevent ICE from entering houses of worship. We are litigating against policies that prolong the detention of individual immigrant children without their families. And of course, we are challenging the lack of due process afforded to our clients, men who were disappeared through an unlawful agreement between the government of El Salvador and the United States Department of State. All told, the courts have ruled against the current administration more than 170 times in less than 200 days because of the fast-moving harms and flagrant violations of the law and of our Constitution. And while this is a dire situation, our work demonstrates that the American people are determined to protect their rights. They are determined to use lawful and peaceful means of petitioning their government and, when necessary, of holding their government accountable. People have talked about their families, and last week was June 6th, which is, of course, the anniversary of when American troops landed on the beaches of Normandy in World War II. I, too, am the mother of a 9-year-old boy, and that 9-year-old boy's great-grandfather served in that battle, and many others throughout the European theater. But as I reflected last week, we don't need to be in Normandy to defend our democracy in June of 2025. We need to be here, in these halls, doing the work in courts across the country and in our communities. And we do need to remember the essential and historical commitment that our nation made at the end of that war to advance democracy and to ensure that we never turn our backs on people who are fleeing persecution. I so appreciate you inviting me here today to participate in this hearing, and it is with a sincere hope that we can come together that I offer my testimony and comments.
All right, opening statements have concluded. We're now going to begin the questioning portion of today's testimony. I'm going to begin with Governor Walz. Governor Walz, I thought that maybe your statement referencing ICE as Gestapo was an outlier statement, but now that Mr. Lynch has endorsed it, it appears that it could be some type of Democrat talking point. Governor.
Hi, Mr. Wonderful here. You know, I don't waste time, and I definitely don't waste money. I joined Start Engine as a strategic advisor.
Do you and other Democrat politicians understand why referencing ICE as Gestapo is offensive? I'm going to explain. The Department of Homeland Security is reporting that ICE agents are now experiencing a 413% rise in assaults. We've seen numerous videos of rioters obstructing and assaulting federal law enforcement after your remarks, including in Los Angeles. So, Governor, do you think that comments like that and rhetoric like that put ICE officers and other law enforcement in greater danger?
Well, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, any attack on law enforcement is unacceptable, wherever it's at, whether it's state, local.
So you understand, and I've got limited time here. I want to highlight for the governors that real-world impact of the policies that you all continue to defend, even in your opening statements, have on American families. Earlier this year in Governor Pritzker's Illinois, a previously deported illegal alien who had re-entered the country was allegedly drunk driving near the University of Illinois when he struck a car sitting at a red light and then fled the scene. The crash killed 2 young women, including Katie Abraham, whose father and stepmother are here today. This is her poster. Katie had her whole life ahead of her, cut off in an instant. Governor Pritzker, this illegal alien should never have been here. He didn't just flee the scene. He fled the state and was apprehended by federal marshals in Texas using a false name. He now faces criminal charges for reckless homicide, leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death, and driving under the influence resulting in death. And he faces a federal indictment for having a fraudulent permanent resident card, a fraudulent Social Security card, and a fraudulent use of passport. Governor Pritzker, do you agree that this illegal alien who killed Katie should never have been in the United States in the first place?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me express my condolences to the family. And those are terrible circumstances. Let me also say that anyone who commits a crime in the state of Illinois...
I understand, Governor. Should that criminal have been here in the first place? Did he have a right to be in this country illegally?
If the person is a criminal of any sort, then they ought to be...
So that person had a right to be in the United States?
They ought to be given their due process rights, and they ought to be convicted. And
the criminal who...
Yes.
entered this country illegally, in your testimony, had a right to be in this country?
No, I'm suggesting to you that when and I have responsibility for the state of Illinois, I can tell you that it's the responsibility of the federal government to manage immigration in this country. And if you're suggesting that the federal government didn't do its job, that is up to you.
Let me ask you this, Governor.
I can tell you that in the
do you
state
believe
of Illinois,
that Joe? Do you believe that President Biden did his job in securing the border?
I was critical of things that President Biden did. I think I've been very public about that. I wrote a letter to the president telling him that.
Okay. Thank you. Now back to Governor Walz. You were obviously selected by Vice President Harris to be a running mate in 2024. I'm curious, did you ever ask Vice President Harris about former President Biden's and then President Biden's cognitive decline?
No, not that I can recall.
You saw President Biden's disastrous debate performance. I'm just curious, you never did comment to Vice President Harris like, wow, he may not be on the top of his game. Nothing was ever mentioned to Vice President Harris. And the reason I ask, obviously, is because I know you watch CNN, and other networks have interviewed a lot of people, including Jean-Pierre and Buttigieg and others that have suggested that they were shielded from President Biden and weren't allowed to speak to him, and that his mental decline was obvious. You never discussed that with Vice President Harris?
No, not that I can recall, Chairman. And I, as governor and then being on the ticket, I was probably more concerned with my own debate performance than President Biden. So no.
Let me ask you this, Governor. Do you believe that the Biden-Harris administration secured the border? You mentioned it's the federal government's role to secure the border to protect Americans from illegals entering the country, I guess. Do you think they did a good job of that?
I think the border has been broken for a very long time through many administrations. It's one of the reasons why Vice President Harris was advocating so strongly for the bipartisan bill.
Did she mention her role as the border czar when you all were out campaigning?
Not that I can recall, other than that we talked about the need to pass the bipartisan border legislation that would have done many of the things that, as a governor, I know would have made our jobs easier.
But President Trump secured the border without any legislation. I mean, that was kind of a myth that was in the media and a Democrat talking point that we needed legislation to secure the border. The border is secure.
Everything's fixed.
That's step one. Step two is to deport the criminal illegals, and that's where we're facing obstruction in your all state. So I'm sure there are a lot more questions that will pertain to that. My time's expired. I now recognize Ranking Member Lynch for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's worth saying again that Democrats oppose violence and lawlessness in all its forms. I do want to point out that the vast majority of protesters have been peaceful. But the most egregious and sweeping displays of the use of force and lawlessness we see in the United States today, and the gravest threat to the rights and freedoms of those that we hold dear, are the acts of the Trump administration itself. President Trump and his administration have crossed the line over and over again, from January 6th, when this building was attacked at his direction, to invoking the Alien Enemies Act, to dismantling USAID, to ignoring court orders, to the attacks and threats against law firms that were protecting democracy. As in the 5 months since Trump took office and put the for sale sign over the White House, he's earned $2.9 billion on his crypto scam. I mean,
you've probably heard about Boxable's flagship product, the Casita.
To call this unprecedented, that word has lost all its meaning. He keeps making history, but the wrong kind. Just the act of sending the National Guard and troops and active duty Marines to L.A. was already an overreach. Supposedly, now we hear reports that those soldiers and Marines were sent to quell protests, but now are detaining civilians and are being trained to perform immigration enforcement functions. Ms. Perryman, what else could go wrong with the National Guard and Marines deployed in L.A.? What are the risks to the Americans who live, work, and exercise their right to freedom and to free speech there?
Well, I would just say that what our Constitution recognizes and how good government functions is really based on trust. And when we look at National Guards, it is the governors that often call the National Guards in. And so, of course, the fact that we are seeing a situation where the president has taken this step without cooperating with the governor and with local communities there is deeply concerning. And of course, we know from history that could lead to escalations and could lead to violence that is really problematic for all of our communities across the country, including in Los Angeles.
Thank you. Ms. Perriman, Secretary of Defense Pete has talked about the deployment order, and he testified that this order, and I'm quoting him, this order is getting ahead of a problem so that if in other places, if there are other riots in places where law enforcement officers are threatened, we would have the capability to surge the National Guard there if necessary. Ms. Perriman, how does the president's broad order and the presumption before the fact that military force would be deployed, how does that pose a threat to other cities across the country?
Well, again, it appears to be an escalation, and the main thing that's really important to so many Americans across the country, as well as local law enforcement in so many areas, that local law enforcement is there to help people be able to peacefully protest. And so there are ways that people in this country can express their views. We don't all agree with each other. And right now you really see the White House, for whatever reason, I think escalating, maybe seeking to create some made-for-TV moments. It's not clear. But I do think that there is a lot at stake here, as you've heard this morning.
Thank you. I want to ask each of the governors, this is a general question, how could each of the governors answer briefly how President Trump's policies, his assaults on the rule of law, and his interjection of military force into California, how that would threaten your states, especially where Secretary Hayes has said that he would support that expansion. Mr. Walz, Governor?
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Lynch. Well, first of all, it's one of the federalism policy of this, especially when it comes to posse comitatus and the Insurrection Act. Governors are in charge. Our National Guard, as all of you know, serve in either Title 10 or Title 32 status under the role of governor. And on all of these operations, the absolute pinnacle and the most critical piece is the coordination amongst them. And as a governor not being notified as local law enforcement, it creates a chaotic situation that they cannot operate as a joint unit. And governors are always there. We do it for floods, we do it for civil unrest, but doing it without causes immense danger, not citizens to, but to those very law enforcement officers who are then put in that chaotic situation.
Thank you. Governor Pritzker?
Local law enforcement are the ones who indicate to the governor or to their local officials who talk to the governor about their need for National Guard. And indeed, I've had that situation in the state of Illinois and called out the Guard when I needed to. I'm careful about when I do it, but again, when local law enforcement indicate that they want that backup or they need that support, we do it. Now, I have to say, when the President of the United States is calling out your National Guard over the top of local law enforcement saying that they don't need it, that they have things under control, it tends to have an inflaming effect on what's going on the ground, just when local law enforcement and officials are getting things under control. And I think that's what we saw in Los Angeles.
Governor Hochul?
Those actions absolutely undermine the sovereignty of individual states. States' governors are the commanders-in-chief of the National Guard. They know what to do, as you've heard from my colleagues. We have deployed them on a number of occasions.